And welcome to Wednesday Night Slides number 68. I've got a variety of stuff to show tonight, and we'll jump right into it so that those who care to do so can get to the World Series. You should be seeing the title slide there in front of you. Anybody want to unmute real fast?
Indeed, we are.
Okay, great. And during the program, if you have a question or comment, feel free to unmute yourself. If you're on a computer, best way to do that is just hit your space bar and hold it down. Ask a question, make a comment, but feel free to jump in if you want to. We're going to start off here with some events that involved train rides, and we're going to go down to Hurlock, Maryland first. Back on October 5th. Every year on the first Saturday in October, Hurlock has its fall festival, and the town owns two ex-Norfolk and Western coaches, and they hire the Maryland and Delaware to come out and run 5 trips between Hurlock and Federalsburg, Maryland. And my chapter, the Wilmington chapter, we car host the trips. And they usually use this RS3M you're seeing here. The Maryland Delaware is being acquired by Delmarva Central. From what I understand, the RS3Ms are owned by the state, the county, somebody other than the railroad. And Delmarva Central has no interest in running them. So once all the paperwork is signed off on, it's likely the end of the RS3Ms. Here we see the 1203 going past the depot in Federalsburg, ex-Pennsylvania Railroad Depot, which is now the Maryland and Delaware's headquarters. And this is in Williamsburg, Maryland, coming past the feed mill on the return trip. Like I said, they ran 5 trips. I was able to get off the train for the middle trip, the 2 o'clock trip, and chase it. And then about a week later, once again, my chapter, the Wilmington chapter, Delaware, of the NRHS, we hosted the national board meeting based out of Wilmington, Delaware. And our activity for the group was a trip on Woodstown Central over in Woodstown, New Jersey, not very far from where I'm sitting right now. And here we see a former Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines GP38, now GP38-3, upgraded. But it's on home rails. The Woodstown Central operates on the Salem branch of what was the Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines. This is at Mannington Mills near Salem, New Jersey. I did 3 run-bys. That was the first run-by. Here's the second run-by. We had a Baldwin switcher on the other end of the train. This is at Acton Station Road in Mannington, New Jersey. The Penzie car is the Mineral Spring, no S, by a parlor car. And then there's 3 ex-Jersey Central commuter cars and a caboose in the train. Our third run-by was in this big farm field between Salem and Woodstown. And following that, we put everybody onto the bus, took them over to Pure Land Industrial Park, home of SMS and the Baldwins. And inside the shop was steam locomotive number 9 and 060, ex-Virginia Blue Ridge, originally U.S. Army. I wanted to show a whole lot more of number 9 tonight, but Woodstown Central has got a big announcement tomorrow, and I was sworn to secrecy both verbally and photographically until they make their big announcement. So you'll see more of number 9 next month, I think. Heading down into Maryland, I was going to attend the chapter meeting of the Perryville chapter of the NRHS, and I stopped off at Singerly on the former Baltimore and Ohio main line and got this westbound or southbound train. Trying to get a little bit of the fall foliage. There wasn't a whole lot out there, but I found a few spots. This is also a Singerly. And then this is at Jackson Station, which is called East Aiken on the railroad. Basically, it's just outside Perryville. Just a shot I did with the train almost coming directly out of the sun, but I fiddled with the shot in Lightroom a little bit, and this is what the result was. The original was pretty black. Then I got down to Perryville, and um, the chapter meets in the former Pennsylvania Railroad depot right on the Northeast Corridor, across from the tower. So I shot a few trains there. This is looking into the sun again. Very contrasty shot. So I just made it black and white. And looking the other direction, here comes a southbound Amtrak train. The tracks off to the left are the port road. It goes up along the Susquehanna River up to Harrisburg. And as the sun was getting lower and lower, it got nice and orange. Another northbound train coming out of the sun. Susquehanna River Bridge is right there behind the train. So I went down to the waterfront for the next train and got this just before sunset. They're putting in a new bridge here. Amtrak is finally putting in they're replacing this ancient bridge, and the new bridge will be on this side of the old bridge. Once the new bridge is in, it'll go into service. Then they're going to either replace or completely rehab the old bridge. So there'll be a 4-track main line through here once they're done. And then after sunset, here's a train coming north past the Perryville Tower. And then it was off to chase the 2102 from North Reading, Pennsylvania, up to Jim Thorpe, PA. Here we see the 484 pounding through Mooresville, Pennsylvania, just above Reading. The shot I really wanted to get was out at Hecla, and it turned out pretty well. The pond, the trees, everything just kind of fell into place here, about as well as I expected. For this chase here, I've chased this trip a few times over the last couple of years. So what I do is I don't run and gun. I plot out my photo stops pretty far apart. Don't drive like a madman. I just drive to the next one and wait for the train to get there. So from Hecla, I went up to East Illinois Junction. This is on a pretty good grade with that sharp curve, and the engine sounds really good through here. And it's really cool. Reading and Northern put signals back in on this line when they took it over, and they put in searchlight signals, which are getting kind of rare on the main lines anymore. We're still at East Illinois Junction for this shot here. And then from there, I drove over to Hawto Lake near Nesquehoning and got this shot. The train goes into Jim Thorpe, and the passengers are unloaded, and they have about 3.5 or 4 hours to spend down in Jim Thorpe. In the fall, well, any time of year, really, Jim Thorpe is an absolute zoo. So I try to find a different activity to do during what I call halftime, the 4 hours between when the train gets to Jim Thorpe when it leaves Jim Thorpe. Here's the observation car going away at Lake Hawto. For my halftime activity on this day, I went up to Weatherly on the former Lehigh Valley. Nice station, restored station here. Hoping to get a train. Well, I found out later that the only daylight train through here is once a week on a Sunday. And I was here on Saturday, so it didn't quite work out, but I got to spend some time away from the crowds, out in the sun. There's this Lehigh Valley hopper car. The Valley had shops here in Weatherly, and that car was probably built in Weatherly way back when. And the freight house is now the Weatherly Museum. Okay, halftime is over, back to the chase. Reading and Northern runs a phenomenal number of passenger trains. In addition to the train from North Reading to Jim Thorpe, they ran RDCs from Pottsville to Jim Thorpe and back. And here we see the RDCs on their return trip. Followed not very long after by the T1. Bit of a glinty going away view. I went down into Tamaka, which is normally a zoo, but I wanted to get the shot by the station. Unfortunately, it was just a little too late in the day, and the shadows had crept up onto the side of the engine about halfway. A little bit of Lightroom work, and the shot is acceptable. It's not the previous week. I hear it was a whole lot better. That shadow was still behind the fence line on this side of the fence line, and the entire locomotive was lit. From here, I headed down to West Leesport, Pennsylvania. I wanted to set up my lights and do a night shot down there because I figured it'd be kind of twilightish when I got down there. Well, it turned out it was dark. But I set up back in this abandoned factory in West Leesport and got the T1 blasting through there on the only a few miles out from its terminus at North Reading. The next week I was back out again. Oh no, actually the next day I went into Philadelphia. The Friends of Philadelphia Trolleys was running a trip in conjunction with the 80th anniversary of the West Jersey chapter of the NRHS. Trolley trip in Philadelphia. So the trip originates at the Elmwood Depot, and the folks at Elmwood, as long as you behave yourself, don't go into the pits and stuff like that, they allow you to come in before the trip and get a few photos. Elmwood is basically running repairs. Here we see one of the rebuilt PCCs, along with a 1980s Kawasaki car. And then I did this multi-image panorama outside for the trip left. This is about 8 or 9 photos stitched together. And you're looking at about 90 degrees to either side of me, up to the middle. Our car is on the right-hand side. We have the destination signs are operated by a programmable card. And we have one card, Bill Monahan of the Friends has one of the cards with all kind of cool things on it. So we had the magazine's name up on the PCC too before we left. To your left of the PCC is car number 9000, which was put back into its original as delivered 1980 paint scheme with the broad stripes. And then the 9061 on the far left is in the current SEPTA scheme. As we headed out of Elmwood, I looked up the street, and these two cars were coming down Eastwick Avenue. And then off we went with our PCC. The idea on this day was to look for any kind of colorful trees that we could use as photo props, like this one here, this red tree at 40th Street. We got up to the loop at 63rd Street in Malvern and went in there for a while for a rest stop, actually. And here we see a regular service car coming into Malvern Loop behind our car. Found this mural. There's all kinds of murals in Philadelphia, and we try to work them into the shots whenever we can. A bit of a yellow tree there, losing a lot of its leaves. And here we are crossing Market Street on 40th. Off to the left there with the ski jump building there. That's the entrance to the Market Frankfurt subway elevated that runs underneath Market Street here. Going through the University of Pennsylvania. We had quite a few photo stops. And the photo stops are all well planned. Take advantage of old buildings and other neat things along the line. Found some nice trees here as you headed down Route 13 towards Yaden. The entire Philadelphia streetcar system is located in Philadelphia, except for one loop in Yeadon and one loop in Darby. Those two are located outside the city limits. And here we are with a regular service car catching up to us. That's the one thing we can't do on these trips is delay regular service cars. So we saw him coming, we had to hop on and get moving again. That took us down to the Yeadon Loop, and that car that was chasing us, we talked the operator into posing it out in the sun so we could get shots of both cars here. Then back onto the trolley and off we went. This church, we've used this a couple dozen times, I would say, as a photo prop in the background on charters. Then out on Woodland Avenue, there's this neat mural that was just put in. Tells you which street you're on. Then from there, it was up to Darby, the other outside of the city limits loop. Okay, now we're back to the following weekend. And I was going to do, had in mind a night shot of 2102, but I didn't want to bother with the chase again. I'd done pretty well the previous week, so I went out west of Reading, Pennsylvania, to Richland, Pennsylvania, along the ex-Reading main line, to see what kind of trains we could get here. Here comes a westbound train on the former Reading. The second unit is the Savannah and Atlanta Heritage Unit. And auto racks. Then I moved on to Wernersville. Got this westbound train. And here's that westbound train's DPU, distributed power unit, going away with an eastbound train coming up. All right, time for my night shot. I got here to the Peacock Locks Viaduct and set up, and I try to get my lights up high enough to shoot over the weeds, but my first attempt just lit up the weeds way too much. So, okay, relocate the lights. So I relocated the lights, and I was still getting too much light off of the weeds in the foreground. So I thought, well, let me leave the lights where they are, and I'll find another angle. So I went around and looked at this angle here as a possible shot, but there's that branch that hangs down over the first right-hand quarter of the viaduct. And that was going to take some pretty precise shooting in the dark to get the train out on the viaduct, but not behind that branch. So I thought that's probably not going to work. I better go back to the broadside shot. So back to the broadside shot. Finally, I got the lights where I liked them. Couple of things to notice here because they're going to be important later on. The wire in the upper left-hand corner. There's weeds under the arches on the left-hand side. And then what I call the centipede weeds sticking up on the right-hand side. Just keep an eye on those as we go through here. So finally, train time. And here comes the train. And because of that shadow that's on the right-hand part of the bridge there, so I had to put the flash where it had to shoot through the trees, cast a shadow. Thought, you know what, that could affect the train. So I shot the train out in the middle of the viaduct to avoid that shadow. And that was okay. And I will admit that the wire up in the upper left corner, I kind of got rid of that. This isn't the primary shot. As it turns out, I cropped it down and did a close-up, see how that looked. This was the primary shot that I was going for. A few things to notice here. The wire is clumsily erased up in the upper left corner. If I was going to make this the shot I wanted to display, I would work on that a little harder. But normally I don't remove wires. I think my shots are generally the way it was. What I did do, though, was I chopped out digitally some of the weeds under the left-hand side of the bridge so you see more water. And then I got rid of that centipede weed on the right-hand side. So okay, that's kind of cheating, but okay. However, by cropping in a little bit tighter on the shot, um, I was able to actually get the wire completely out of the picture. So this shot here is pretty much um, the way it was. Nothing erased or added to the scene. And then a little bit tighter shot, the same shot, just cropped in tighter. And I fortunately, I noticed that that shadow that was on that pier did not interfere with the locomotive. So that was a good thing. So a fun thing to do. I hadn't had the lights out for a moving train for a while. I got the T1 twice with them now this month. We're going to change gears for a second here. Um, when you find a Arby's original cowboy hat with neon and it's all working, that is pretty cool. However, in North Wilmington, Delaware, there is an Arby's that has two neon cowboy hats, and almost all of it works. There's just one piece missing on the right hand side. The sand and sandwich is out. Now, this sits between the lanes of US 202 Concord Pike. Northbound lanes are on our right, southbound lanes are on the left. So I guess with it being split and the restaurant sitting between the lanes, they felt the need to put up two cowboy hats. And then I went out for a drive around South Jersey recently, and this is Big Rusty. I've shown him in previous slideshows. Went back and got some better shots of him this time. He is located in Hainesport, New Jersey, and there's this artist going around who's building these giants out of junk that he finds around. About a dozen of these around the country now. Big Rusty is our New Jersey giant, and he's located in a abandoned pottery factory. This is the inside of the pottery factory. The town is making this into a park. Even though all this graffiti is there, you can see they've cleaned up all the debris off the floors and stuff like that. It's actually somewhat keep it safe. So it's getting somewhat presentable. They're making a park here. So there's Big Rusty's head. And that's the overall complex showing the abandoned pottery factory and Big Rusty. From there, it was off to Whitesbog, which is a restored manufacturing town from the 1800s in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. And the reason I was at Whitesbog is because these bogs here are actually used for cranberries. They grow the cranberries, and then they flood the bog to float the cranberries to the surface and harvest them that way. And there were some cranberries still there, kind of late in the season. But there were still some floating cranberries around. Next fall, I'm going to make a real point to get out there and shoot more of this stuff at Whitesbog and other places. There's actually one farm, Lee Farm, that has walking tours of their facility while they're harvesting their cranberries. So that's going to be on my must-do list next year. Like I said, Whitesbog is also a restored manufacturing town.
It was all farm. It was all farming.
It was all farming?
Yes.
There wasn't any iron there beforehand? A lot of these towns had iron before. Okay, all farming. Thanks, Dave. Dave's a volunteer at Whitesbog, so he knows this better than I do.
Yeah, the cranberries this year is kind of tough because of our drought.
So I walked around the grounds a little bit. They're doing Halloween stuff there. When I was there, they were. And this, I don't know if this is a Halloween thing or if this is there year round. But it's the Jersey Devil playing a banjo. Go figure. And the water tank is the probably the symbol of Whitesbog. All right, back to trains. We're gonna head out to Utah for the Heber Valley. This is a trip I took in 2010. Heber Valley runs on a former Rio Grande branch out of Heber City, Utah, not far from Salt Lake City. Back in 2010, this locomotive, consolidation number 618, that worked for Union Pacific, was coming up on its federally mandated 15-year rebuild. It only had a few operating days left before it had to go out of service. So I organized a charter out there for the final days of 618. And we started off right at sunrise, got the golden light coming in here on our first run by of the first day. Extremely scenic railroad. And I had done 2 winter trips out here before. This was the first time we had done a trip in the spring. This was in May. One of my favorite freight cars in photo freight service is this Sinclair tank car. Gorgeous, gorgeous car. And it's actually functional because it's full of water, and the water can be piped into 618's tender, and they can run all day without having to go back into Heber City and take on water. The chief mechanical officer out there is Mike Manweller, and I had known him since his days on the Western Maryland Scenic. And I talked to him to make all the arrangements for the charter. And I said to Mike, I said, how long can we run each day? And he goes, well, it's 618's final days. He says, you can run all day and all night and all the next day without stopping if you want to. He says, I got crews lined up that want to run the engine one final time. I said, well, we can't quite go all night, but still very cool. There's a couple of nice bridges right outside of Heber City for photos. And this barn makes a nice backdrop. Every railroad has to have a famous tree. Cumbers and Toltec has the Jukes tree. This is Heber Valley's, I guess it's a lonesome pine or something. And then the 618 is like the Starship Enterprise. You can run with shields up or shields down. We had run with shields on the side of the tender in the morning. When we got to Vivian Park, we took the shields off, give it a little bit of a different look for the afternoon trip. So afternoon trip was shields down. The bridge at Vivian Park. And much of the railroad runs along the Deer Creek Reservoir, which just adds to the really nice scenery. We got around on this passenger train. It would drop us off, then we do the run-bys with the freight train. This Union Pacific EMD switcher pulled us around. They got a real nice freight train they can put together there too. It's just a good looking train, good looking engine, and wonderful scenery. The 618 went down for its rebuild, like I said, in 2010. It has not come back yet. Heber Valley has gotten incredibly busy with their tourist trains, even with diesels. And they've been concentrating more on getting coaches restored than getting steam back. Because right now capacity is their issue. There's my tank car again. That Sinclair tank car is just so cool. That night we did a night photo session just outside of Heber City. while we were out on the line taking pictures, the shop forces were busy painting a car in the shop. Like I said, Mike Manwiller came from the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. His favorite railroad is the Western Maryland, and he had his people putting the finishing touches on a Western Maryland boxcar while we were out on the line. And for the night session, he tucked in his Western Maryland boxcar behind the locomotive. The night session started with shields down, but then as it got on, we got shields up again on the tender. That green light down the tracks there, that is actually the caboose marker lamp. It was really bright. This is all back in the Lumadine days, painting with light. I would have to run around the train and throw flash from different spots. Took about 30 seconds or a minute. So you get the star trails up in the sky because of that. There's that Western Maryland boxcar, and this bike up in the cab there. Next morning, we're back out again. Western Maryland boxcar now behind the engine because we figured we could run pretty much all day with the water we had in the tender. This is normally a pond, but it's kind of dried up in May. On this day here, instead of going on a passenger train and chasing the freight around, we ran this as a mixed train with the combine, the combination baggage car and coach on the rear. So we rode in that. One of the nice advantages of that is that combine has a grill inside of it. And the Heber Valley provided a cook. And all day long, we could munch on hot hamburgers and things like that. Had our diner right along with us. We're running shields down here at this point. Heber City, where the railroad is located, is a huge ski resort. And in fact, when Salt Lake hosted the Winter Olympics back in 2002, Soldier Hollow is where a lot of the ski events took place. And that's right along the Heber Valley here. On this day here, there was a regular tourist train out as well, so we had to meet him. And here we are coming out of the siding, following the meet. And while we were doing that, the shields back up again. Now we're running with shields on the tender. Had I been thinking at the time, and when you're running these things you can get lost in the details. Had I been thinking at the time, though, what we should have done was just simply put one shield on one side and no shield on the other side. You can't shoot both sides of the train at the same time. and not bother with putting shields off and on during the day, but all worked out. Railroad was more than happy to do it. So all in all, it was an excellent trip. Had a good time out there, and like I said, I'm anxious for steam to come back on the Heber Valley because it would be fun to do another charter out there someday. That's going to wrap things up for this evening. The last Thursday in November is Wednesday. Last Wednesday in November is Thanksgiving Eve. So to avoid that, I'm gonna slide things up a week. Next program will be on November 20th. So keep that in mind. I am going to sign this off for the YouTubers right now. And then if anybody